Hello, this is Lino Tadros, and in this video we're going to be talking from Microsoft Fabrics regarding data warehousing. So in previous videos we talked about the one lake, we talked about lake houses, SQL endpoints and everything else. So why in the world would I actually need a data warehouse if I can get to it using my Delta Parquet as a SQL endpoint? Well, if you remember what I mentioned before in the previous videos is that when you deal with actually lake houses, it's pretty much a read-only getting into this data for data analytics reason, which works extremely well, very fast. But sometimes read-only is not enough. You would like to actually have a data warehouse that not only will accept read, but also write to this data for whatever reason that you need to do that, maybe also for different kind of performance that you're looking for. So notice when you click on the logo all the way at the bottom left, it says Microsoft Fabric. Today we're going to go ahead and click on Data Warehouse. Let's click on that, and that will open up the Data Warehouse. Notice a lot of things I can do for data warehousing. I can create one right now. I can bring in some sample to play around with. I can start doing data pipelines, and that's available in a different video. Show you about data flows and data pipelines for the data factory. I can do the data flow with Gen 2, and all of these things are available in here. Even bringing in or mirroring some data from Snowflake and other places as well. Let's go ahead and click on the warehouse, and I'm going to be building a brand new one. I'm going to call this one Star Trek Warehouse. You can call it anything you want, of course. We'll say create. And once that warehouse will be created, I will see it here on the left side automatically. Excellent. And once we get to the data warehouse screen, you will notice I can write my own T-SQL to create some tables, maybe do whatever I need to do in SQL itself. I can actually use a data flow Gen 2 to bring data from the outside straight into my warehouse. I can create a pipeline. Even if I have a Visual Studio, for instance, SQL database project that I've worked on, I can import it right in here. Or if I just want to actually experiment, which I definitely recommend for you to do, you can open up the sample data, get some data about New York taxis or diabetes data. Microsoft is very generous, giving you a lot of different samples so you can play around with and understand how data warehousing and Microsoft Fabrics in general, whether a lake house or not, you can actually play around with that. For me right now, I'd like to actually go for T-SQL in here. And notice when we say T-SQL, it will open up a SQL window that will allow me to cheat a little bit. It will actually tell you I can create a table for you based on the name of the warehouse. We use the schema, and we can give it whatever name we want. So I can give it all the types and all the different columns I need for that table. And when I run this, it will automatically create that table for me. That table does not exist anywhere in my warehouse right now. And once you do that, you will be able to go ahead and maybe ingest data from the outside. In my case, for instance, I'll go get some sample data, and I'll show you how to do that in a few minutes. But in reality, if you have been in the world of data analytics for a while, you'll notice Microsoft have given us a lot of different data to play around with. In the old days, it used to be Northwind database, and then we moved to AdventureWorks, and nowadays we have a lot more stuff like worldwide or wide world importer databases and others as well, that people can actually get a lot of data to be able to experiment with data analytics as well. All right. So in this example in here, for instance, let's go ahead and create. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go ahead and bring in some code. First of all, I'm going to drop a table if it already exists. It's called city. I'm going to call it dimension city just because I'm going to bring in a couple of dimensions tables and one big fact table to show you how this works. So if it's already exists, I'd like to go ahead and remove it. And then I'll do my create table on the dimension city. And these are all the different columns inside of that table I'd like to create. Great. Let's go ahead and run this. And you notice it's going to take a few seconds, and all of a sudden we get ourselves a table inside of the schema in here. If I open it up, notice under DBO tables, there is my dimension city. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit smaller, and I'm going to go ahead and remove all that, and I'm going to create another table. Let me paste some code in here. We'll drop a customer table. It's also a dimension table. It has all the columns I need, and I made sure the names are correct names in here. Let me go ahead and close this because I didn't close it correctly. I forgot to paste a couple of lines. Let me come back in here. We'll do this, and we'll go to a new line. All right, that's good enough for me. All right. Notice also that you have to be careful with the names in here because Delta Lake or Delta Parquet files are case sensitive. So make sure that you have the correct casing in here, because when you ingest the data from the outside, if there is a difference between the casing for the names of the column, whatever, that can cause a problem as well. All right, let's go ahead and run this guy, and hopefully it will not take long at all. It didn't, and we got ourselves another table as well. We'll go through a couple more. This one in here will be the date. I'm bringing in a table that contains a date. I'm not just creating the table. I'm not actually bringing in any data yet. I'm just creating the schema for all the columns inside of that table. We'll go ahead and run this one for date. So now I have 3-dimensional tables. And then finally, I'm going to bring in a big fact table, which again, I'm not bringing any data. I'm just creating the schema. All right, let me go ahead and replace that. And notice this one is the fact sale table. This one will end up in a few minutes bringing in millions of records inside of there as well. We will see how all the stuff will be ingested. But let's go ahead and create this table. I will say run. It will not take much time at all. It's just a schema. And notice here when we refresh, now my warehouse have empty tables, one called city, one called customer, one is called date, and there is my fact sale in here as well. And now it's time to do the fun part. I'm going to do this 4 different ways. First of all, we'll say okay, that's a glitch, but it will not be harmful, I promise. We'll say Control V this. So right now I'm going to use the copy command, copy into, and I'd like to put it into my dimension city table, which is completely empty right now. And I'm going to say from, and I'm going to be putting in a URI in here where the Parquet files for Dimension City is all about. This is a blob storage inside of Azure that has no authentication. It's anonymous. Everybody can access it. So take a look at it if in case you'd like to play around with this. You can just go ahead and have this specific URI, and that will allow you to get the Dimension City. Of course, this is the Wide World Importer database. It's a data warehouse. And you will have tons of different tables. I'm only going to be working with 4 of them inside of this video. An important thing is we'll have to say with file type equals Parquet, just to let the system know that I'm bringing in Parquet file. I'm going to be putting into a Parquet file. It's a Delta Parquet in my case as well. Let's go ahead and run this and see how many of these records will come in from the web using the dimensioncity.parquet file as well. Notice here it's taking a little bit longer because it's of course going out and ingesting the data. It took about 10 seconds or so. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And we will notice we have about 116,000 records that were entered into the Dimension City right now. So if I click on Dimension City, we'll give it a second and the first 1,000 records will show up in my grid in here to make sure that everything was imported correctly or ingested correctly. There it is. It's all good. Showing the first 1,000 record, but the others are definitely going to still be empty. I did not ingest anything into the other ones whatsoever. Sounds good? All right, let's go back and do some more work to copy data from the internet or from whatever blob storage or anywhere else that you have access to the data into the other 3 tables as well. Let's do that with the customer table. Same kind of code. We'll say copy into for the customer in here. I'm going to be getting this from the dimension customer inside of that blob storage in Azure, and it will be Parquet as well. Let's go ahead and run it. And we will see here in a second, there is only 403 records affected, not a lot of customers on this file, which is fine with me. Let's do the 3rd dimension, which is the date one. And that is the copying into the date from the dimension_date.parquet, and we'll say run. And that also will not take a long time. It's only 6,000 or so records inside of that for the date, and we're pretty good shape. All right, now let's go ahead and do the big one. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the copy into for fact sale. I'm going to get it from the fact sale Parquet, and we'll run this guy. Let's go ahead and get a cup of coffee and come back when this is done. And it is done, and it brought in 50 million records available on this data set. It did take about 2.5 minutes or so, which is not too bad. Remember, I'm running here on a trial version, which has an F64 capacity, which is pretty hunky, alrighty? If you're running on something like the introductory F2 capacity or something, this will take longer than that because the machines behind the scenes are definitely lower capacity or lower quality than actually what's happening on F64 or higher, for instance. But again, ingesting 50 million plus different records in 2.5 minutes was not bad at all. Now I have all the data available for me inside of my data warehouse. So if I click on the city, you will see the first 1,000. If I click on the fact sale itself, again, out of the 50 million, it will show you the first 1,000, and everything will be in here with no problem whatsoever. Now let's go ahead and do the modeling. So I'm going to click on model all the way at the bottom in here to try to set up the relationship between these four. And that would be very easy to do in the data warehouse. Let's click on model. And it's opening it up. And there will be some definite table. There are some internal tables that will tell you about the execution of the request history and the session history and so on. I'm only interested in the four that I created in the data warehouse, which is city, customer, date, and let me see where is the other one. There it is. That's Mr. Fact Sale right there. I'm going to bring that in. I'm not going to really care much about the ones coming in for monitoring and so on, doing all that stuff. These are the four that I'm interested in. All right. So let's start with the city. I'm going to take the city key. Notice I have a city key in here. I'm going to drag the city key to city key for the fact sale. It needs to be one to many, not many to one. So make sure you always do this correctly. We'll say save. And once you do that, notice that the star here, which is the many, has to be on the fact table side. If you see it reversed, you need to click on the property of that line and change it from many to one to many. But the star always has to be on the fact table, okay? If I go to the customer here, let's see if there is a customer key. There it is. And I believe customer key is right there. We'll click on this guy. Let me drag this in here. And same thing, we'll say one to many. We'll say save. Again, as long as I see the star for the many on the fact table side, we're good. And then finally for the date, let's take a date in here. We'll say, where is a date in here that I can use? Let's say date. There you go. And I have a lot of choices in here. I'm going to say the invoice date. How about that? We'll drag this on the invoice date. We'll do the same thing. We'll say one to many. We'll say save. And right now I just created my star schema pretty much right now between my fact sale and all my other dimensional table. They're all hooked up together. And from that point, of course, you can create a visual query, or you can go ahead and create a new report directly inside of Power BI, for instance. So let's go ahead and click on new report right there. And it will tell me new report with all available data from city, customer, date, and scale. I said, yes, you are correct. Go for it. And that will take a few seconds to generate everything and make it available for me in Power BI here really quickly. Awesome. Within about 10 seconds or so, it came in. I'm in Power BI. Notice at the right side for the data, I have my city, my customer, my date, and fact sale, all the information here available for me. I can start as usual, if you're familiar with Power BI, to generate all my report and my dashboards and do whatever I need to make this work. So let's give it a shot really quickly. I'm going to go to the city table and let's see, for instance, we're going to do, let's say, state province. Let me grab this guy and put it in here. All right. And in the state province, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Let me go ahead and remove this from here. What I want to do is to start getting a slicer. Let me click on a slicer first, and then I'm going to grab this state province and I'm going to put it inside of my slicer. That's a much better idea, I think. And once you do that, you'll notice it will actually have all the different state province coming in from the city available for them. That will be my slicer. Now let's go ahead and click some outside of this specific widget, and we will go ahead and get a table, for instance. Let's go ahead and grab a table in here. And in the table, maybe we'll go to the fact sale table. And I would like to bring in, let's say, the invoice date. Let me bring in an invoice date right there. There we go. So that will have tons of that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to actually bring in some total, maybe. Total including tax or without tax, up to you. I'm going to click on the total including tax in here. And we'll drag this and we'll put it right next to it. So right now we're seeing everything for about $41 billion coming in. But notice, for instance, when I go, let's say I live in Florida, so let's click in Florida in here. You notice this changes automatically on the fly. And I want you to see the speed and how this is taking place, okay? This is all based on data in our data warehouse that we have created, okay? And I can save that report. I can actually share it with the rest of my team, for instance, or outside of my team if I want to. And they will be able to access it with no problem. So that is the beautiful thing about using data warehousing and also using reports. And there will be a lot more videos again about doing some more interesting stuff with data warehousing in the future. Hopefully this was a useful video for you. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you again soon in another video. Thank you.